is activated and the operational plan is in place at the border. Well, let's speak now to Vanessa Neumann. She's a former advisor to the opposition leader Juan Guaido, who now runs political risk research firm Asymmetrica. Thank you so much for joining us, Vanessa. What's your reaction to the method in which this regime change seemingly has taken place?
Well, thank you for having me on. Really, it's the restoration of democracy, because Maduro was due to have left the presidential palace on the 10th of January of 2025, having lost a 3-1 landslide in the elections, despite the rigging, despite the disqualification of Maria Corina Machado, then her next replacement, and then her stand-in, Edmundo Gonzalez, won because Venezuelans want out from under this tyranny. So what happens next in Venezuela is really on the heads of what the people of the Chavistas who remain, namely Delcy Rodriguez, Jorge Rodriguez, who's a sort of this chief strategist. Delcy Rodriguez is the chief financial officer, shall we say, of the regime. The head torturer and strategist is her brother Jorge, and Diosdado Cabello and Granco. And if those people leave peacefully, as they were supposed to have done in January of last year, we really should not have civilian casualties in Venezuela. Now, the longer they try to cling to power, and when the democratic forces of Venezuela have voted them out, then this will continue to escalate and get messier. So the deaths of Venezuelans is on the heads of the Maduro's enclave.
Vanessa, you mentioned this is a restoration of democracy, but how democratic do you think it can be, or how sustainable would a democratic future there be when it has been forced by a foreign power through violence?
It has not been forced by, it's not forced by violence. First of all, this was very much a capture operation, and it has played out exactly as I have said over at least my last 10 television interviews. They have taken out the command and control, the power to respond and attack United States forces without civilian casualties, or, and doing everything possible to disrupt the illicit financial flows of illicit oil, narcotics, and to a lesser extent gold, and to respond. They have not attacked U.S. civilians, and Venezuelans have been pleading to try and get this criminal organization out, and that's exactly what they have done. They have captured a criminal, the head of the criminal organization, which is Maduro, and his wife, who are indicted, and their nephews have been tried in the United States for drug trafficking, and also they're wanted there's an arrest warrant for crimes against humanity, and as well for torture, and in the UN, they're very damning. There's 18,000 political prisoners currently being tortured just since 2018, and so they have captured a capo and taken him out. What happens with the rest of the enclave? As he should have done himself. So what happens to the rest of the enclave depends on them. There is a Venezuelan political structure that was voted by the Venezuelan people, ready to step into the presidential palace, which is what the Venezuelan people voted for in a 3-1 landslide. So it's there. There's a president, there's a vice president, there's a ministerial cabinet, there are aides, and all sorts of things. And Venezuela was, up until Chavez, the longest running democracy in Latin America.
And realistically,
and we hope that will become.
And realistically, again. Vanessa, how likely do you think it is that stability will fall into place next?
Well, I think that we will have, several very hard days. I think Delcy Rodriguez, has stepped up and, is trying to act presidential. She is not really a presidential leader. She does not command the military. I think the military is asaltado, as we say in Spanish, has been sort of attacked and cornered because of the attacks on the military installations. She was a financial negotiator, so I don't think she can maintain the command of the military, who want to flee. And that's exactly why you see the Colombians moving their troops to the border, because they anticipate a massive exodus into Colombia, both of civilians and of Venezuelan military posing as civilians, as a diaspora. So they will So I think I think that they will try and cling to power as much as possible. The ones to fear are really Diosdado Cabello, who is a military commander and is one of the big drug traffickers of the Cartel de los Soles, and Granco, who runs the DGCIM, which is the internal counterintelligence military. But now the military have bigger worries with the bombing of Fuerte Tiuna and other military forts than just whether they're going to be turned in by the Cuban spies to be tortured. Now they have to face this. So now suddenly their decision-making tree has changed rapidly.
If this US attack leads to unrest or more instability in the interim, do you think the US has a responsibility to be involved and to help?
Oh, I think the causal responsibility. I think the responsibility lies specifically on Venezuela. I think the international community had a long responsibility to help back when we pleaded with them in 2017, and we had millions of people in the streets, and they had armored personnel carriers running over people and shooting children up close range with in the chest. The international community did nothing. The international community did nothing when they lost the election in 2018. The international community did nothing when Maduro clung to power despite the landslide win. I think that this is very much not just on the United States, but on everybody who did business and supported Maduro, thinking that they could make a buck off the backs of the suffering of millions of Venezuelans. And that's who's responsible.
How do you think the US airstrikes that were carried out in the early hours of the morning, how do you think they would have affected support within Venezuela?
Well, Venezuelans, I know I have friends and family within Venezuela still. Everybody is hunkered down, and some have bunkers or have found bunker-like locations into which to remain. There was some anticipation that something like this would happen. Venezuelans, by and large, want to be free. If this results, and as I have said before, in a swifter transition, which is up to Delcy and Jorge Rodriguez, Diosdado Cabello, and Coronel Granco, if it's up to them, if this happens quickly, the Venezuelans will be very happy to be liberated and have their country back. You can see that, and and save from the economic collapse, and have a country where you don't just have the most expensive restaurants in Latin America and Ferrari dealerships for people who can pay with their dollars from narcotics, while 80% of the country survives on less than one meal a day, which is the current situation in Venezuela. So any opportunity to rise up and get more than one meal a day, and not be tortured for speaking out against the Ferrari buyers, I think is a good opportunity for Venezuela. Venezuelan people will need a lot of help. They will need a lot of friends and a lot of support. Hopefully now the international community will step up in the reconstruction of Venezuela, in peacekeeping, in stabilization operations. Stabilization operations, by the way, usually happen with doctors, police officers, and nurses to immediately on the ground employ people and keep people from joining armed groups. This is something I used to do. I worked DDR in neighboring Colombia for years, which is the off-ramping of terrorists, right? And counter recruitment of child soldiers. So these are the things that we would have to see in the coming days once the Chavistas leave power and Edmundo González, the rightful president that the Venezuelan people want, steps into the presidential palace as they want, hopefully on the 10th of January. And then we can have that peaceful stabilization operations and rebuilding of Venezuela.
Vanessa Neumann, thank you for your time.